Do you look at stuff other than black walnuts? I assume.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
a little bit. I'm a big hunter, so
Hey,
so all this kind of stemmed from my hunting days. So
I like that.
I love how that's kind of a common thread in a lot of foraging origin stories is that it's kind of like the auxiliary aim of what we were already outside doing.
Yeah.
And that it's kind of been wrapped up in that experience and enhancing all of it at the same time. Thanks for sticking with us through our extended hiatus here on the Wild Edible World podcast. I am your faithful host, Michael.
And I am Steve. Man, this is wild.
Yeah, what a ride it's been, right?
Back in the old saddle, our second rodeo, you know?
So, yeah, we're back in our third season, or third year, I guess. We don't really do seasons.
Yeah.
But third year of the show, if you're still with us, thank you so much for being here. It's been a bit of a time away for me specifically. I had to step away, take care of my boy. I had a son to raise, so still doing that.
Yeah, in the process. It's not done after 6 months, surprisingly enough.
No, but I'm a little bit more used to it now. I think we can get the show back on the road, and there's a lot of cool stuff coming on the future. I think this year, the future of this show. And we'll have some time to talk about that, but we really wanted to kind of like hit the ground running with this return to the show with some black walnuts. So black walnuts are something we haven't actually talked about on the show yet. So that's kind of surprising to me.
Because they're everywhere.
Yeah, they're absolutely everywhere. And everybody knows about them, I think, are familiar with them in some way or fashion. But we wanted to have somebody on that was more than familiar with them in any kind of fashion. So we're so happy to have with us JJ Reich, or Reich, I should have asked.
Reich. Yep, you got it right.
Nailed it. Damn, should have been more confident.
Yep.
No. I was thinking the same thing like 20 seconds before you said it. I was like, oh, I wonder if that's Reich?
Yeah, you never know. Well, thanks so much for being here. Black Walnut Daddy on Instagram. Hilarious username. I love the nut scratchers you made and everything. It's been looking forward to having this conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. This is awesome.
So, Nuts About Black Walnuts is the book that you wrote. Did you self-publish this?
Yes, I published it on Amazon.com. So it's through their publishing app.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's really easy to do it with Amazon. So it's a great way for people to get books published. That normally takes a long time to try to find a publisher and whatnot. But it's great.
Yeah, this is so cool, man.
Yeah, it's a nice, clean little copy. It's got a clear picture of you holding a nice, firm nut on the cover, and we like a good grip.
Oh, yeah.
Good grip photo.
And then
that's actually that's not me. That's actually, although my hands have been in lots of magazine articles, that's not my hand. We actually photographed that from the guys at Hammond Black Walnuts in Stockton, Missouri.
Sure. Yep. Very familiar.
What a coinkydink.
Yeah. We'll be tasting them later on the show. I have some nuts from them.
Awesome. Very cool.
And then on the back of the book, I think there's a little bit of a self-portrait, a guy wearing a red hat.
Yeah.
Big beard, some boots, a big belt.
Yeah, super cool artwork.
Yeah, so that was artwork was done by my friend Kickley. He does a lot of illustrations for a lot of different things. But basically, the kind of gnomes have been kind of a family tradition. My son really grew up like really loving them, and I just think I think gnomes and gnome lore is kind of cool. And so I basically had Kickley draw this gnome packing out this big black walnut out of the woods, because I know if gnomes exist that they would be definitely crazy over black walnuts.
For sure.
I love that. I like just that kind of like wink to folklore. You know, I don't earnestly believe that fairies or goblins or dwarves exist, but it's kind of fun to play with that. I don't know. I love that imagery.
Yeah, I definitely don't believe in it either. But if they did exist, it'd be pretty cool to be friends with one, I think. So
I also love just like the whole James and the Giant Peach vibe of that. You know, like imagine if you could forage a nut that was like the size of your torso. You know, like how badass would that be?
yeah, well, if gnomes did exist, they would definitely know about all the edible foods in the wilderness, and
Oh yeah.
they would know a lot more. I'm sure they know a lot more than we would. So that's kind of how I played with that.
So you mentioned before we started recording about how hunting kind of led to your fascination with black walnuts, or just kind of or foraging in general. You want to talk about your backstory there a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I actually work in the hunting industry. I am a senior manager in marketing for Federal Ammunition, and so I basically do a lot of hunting, is mostly for wild turkeys. I actually am a writer as well. I write all the press releases for Federal Ammunition, but I also freelance write. I'm a columnist for the National Wild Turkey Federation.
Nice.
And
Cool.
I write all the turkey calls, the turkey call column.
Okay.
So
That's a cool column name.
yeah, so and then my wife grew up on a farm in Wisconsin. It was like a 120-acre farm that they turned into a tree farm in the late 60s and early 70s. So they actually they took this old rundown farm and they planted 40,000 trees on 125 acres.
Oh my God.
And now, fast forward 50 years later, it's like, it's all woods. And I would say at least 1,000 trees are mature black walnuts. There could be more.
Wow.
But they chose black walnuts for the value of the wood. And so, yeah, it's just trees everywhere there. And so black walnuts, I think you guys have heard this, but it has the reputation of being like the hardest nut to crack.
Mhm.
Is that what you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you hear that a lot in the foraging realm.
So when I discovered these black walnuts, I was asking my mother-in-law about them, and she's like, "Oh yeah, we planted them for the wood. They produce nuts, but they're messy. They have a reputation of being an ankle breaker, is what people
For
say.
sure.
Because
Yeah.
they have that. Yeah, and so they wreck lawnmowers. They get cars messy. They just have.
They give your best friend's little brother a black eye sometimes if you throw them at him. That's
Yes.
generally my experience with them.
Yeah, definitely. Like they just have a bad reputation. And so so my mother-in-law said, they're messy, they're dirty, they're hard to crack, but they're delicious, but it's just a big pain in the butt. So we don't do anything with them. And so, I don't know if you know this, but a black walnut can drop between 50 to 1,500 walnuts per tree. So if you have 1,000 black walnuts and it's dropping 1,500 nuts each, I mean, we were looking at like 500,000 or 1,000,000 nuts on this property every year.
Wow.
That basically just go to the squirrels.
A lot of squirrels
lucky
then, huh?
squirrels, dude. Yeah.
So I mean, so I would be turkey hunting. I would deer hunt. So I'd sit in tree stands and like stare at these trees for 8 hours, or I would turkey hunt and sit under a tree and call for a turkey under one of these black walnut trees. And just when you're hunting, you have so much time to think and ponder and just like rejuvenate and just have a really lot of good moments with nature. And so I'm staring at these trees and I'm like, how they can't be that hard to crack. Like it can't be that hard of a process. I think she's just like, I don't know. She's just telling me that she doesn't want me to mess with these or whatnot, but there has to be something out there. So that's where about 15 years ago, I just started deep diving into black walnuts and trying to learn everything I possibly could about them, and trying to figure out a way to process them and eat them and use them in a way that isn't as hard as everybody says it is. And so that's how I kind of got into it.
So now we want to take all of that research from you. What's the easiest way to crack a black walnut?
Yeah, so that's the thing, is that, once I started figuring out the process, then, I got a lot of questions from people asking me, like, how do you do it? Like, you figured it out, what do you do? And so that's how I wrote the book. And the book is really just what I say, I call them essays. They're kind of short chapters, but I think it has like 47 different little short chapters. It just talks about little different topics of it. And one of them is how to crack, like you just asked. So the easiest way to say that is you need to get a black walnut cracker. Like you can't have a small little hand cracker, or those nut crackers that just at Christmas time where mixed nuts, and you have that like chopstick looking thing that's connected.
Oh yeah, it's gonna destroy those.
Yeah, that's not gonna work at all. And none of the nutcrackers, you have to have like a robust, like a machine, like a something that was made specifically for black walnuts. So I looked all over. There's a bunch of antique ones. There's a couple that were sold as black walnut crackers. They have like weird names, like the Steel Nutcracker 2 and the King Cutter. There's a lot of companies that created these things, so they kind of come and go. Basically some guy decided he wanted to crack black walnuts, built something, sold a few of them, and then now they're gone. But I did find this one company in Missouri. They're out of Lake Ozark. It's a father and son team. It's called, their names are Dennis and Basil Bacon. And they created this. Yes, Basil Bacon. He actually was a Bass Pro fisherman like in the 60s.
That's amazing.
And he's an engineer too.
The lore behind this guy has to be amazing.
Yeah, he's cool. And his son was born deaf, so I can't ever have any phone conversations with him, obviously. So I just kind of became a pen pal with him, and we emailed and text all the time. But Dennis is really cool. But they created this machine. It's called the Grandpa's Goody Getter. And it looks like a slot machine. It's like this big gold machine that has this big pull handle and springs and cams and ram cutters and like all this stuff. But it basically cracks the black walnut perfectly every time.
I own a Grandpa's Goody Getter, and it is probably the funniest named product that I have. I haven't had an opportunity to use it, honestly. I've been in a transition of living spaces and just haven't, there's a lot of space and real estate that the process of processing any nut, not just black walnuts that are notoriously difficult and require this specific piece of machinery or a stone and some hammers or something like that, where this piece is just going to be flying everywhere. Grandpa's Goody Getter is legendary, I think, among people that have been fascinated by nuts. Excellent recommendation from you, and it's hilarious to find out that the people that made it have an equally silly name.
Yeah, seriously.
I think that's amazing.
And it looks badass.
Yeah.
It's a cool looking machine.
And so I think like back in Basil's day, where he would go out and find all these black walnuts, probably in the 60s, 70s, or 80s or whatnot, and he really liked these, and then he'd have his grandkids like crack them for him. I hear so many stories about how people say, "Oh, I used to crack black walnuts with my grandparents," back in the day. So I think it was one of those things where they really liked edible foods and went out and found wild nuts, and then it was a whole like family affair to try to crack them. And you're right, they did use hammers and rocks. Now, hammers and rocks will work, but oh my gosh, that's a lot of work for little return, because you will crack the nut and smash the shell, but you'll also smash all the nut meat kernels and all that, and you'll lose everything. So
yeah, and half the satisfaction is getting out those those like lung shaped chunks.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for sure. So it's like, if you're going to spend all this effort onto it, and then you're going to crush everything, it's really hard to collect, crushed kernels when there's crushed shells too. So you want something that cracks it perfectly, so you can pull, the full kernels out like that. So, this works. I did find a guy on eBay. He makes, his name is Bob. He makes this black walnut cracker that he just sells on eBay. That one works pretty well. Hammond's Black Walnuts on blackwalnuts.com. They sell the Steel 2, which works pretty well. But bottom line is, if you're going to get into black walnuts, you have to commit to buying a specialized cracker. And it's going to run you anywhere between like $80 to $200 for the Grandpa Goody Getter nowadays. So, but I bought my first Grandpa Goody Getter probably 15 years ago. And so I have the new iteration from... I have like 4 of them, because he says every 4 years he updates the parts and things like that. So
nice.
I think I have all the old versions.
Nice, and they have like adapters too. I think the one that I bought has a adapter to make like the impact pin smaller in diameter, so you can do hazelnuts or something too, right?
Yes, see, there's a small nut adapter, so I've cracked, actually, I bought a bunch of macadamia nuts from Hawaii, and I cracked that on there. Hazelnuts. There's also a long nut adapter for Brazil nuts, but also butternut.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Which I've not, I really want to find some, but I haven't not yet.
No, that's a very, a very cool tree to plant right now, I think, just because of the blight and everything, or canker. I forget what's specifically affecting the butternuts, but they're a very important tree to plant and collect and like maintain that relationship with, as well as it's just like straight up delicious food.
Sigh.
Well, what's wrong, buddy?
Well, I just realized this mushroom supplement I bought isn't actually made with mushrooms. It's made with something called myceliated grain?
Myceliated grain?
Oh, no!
I'm sorry to tell you, buddy, but myceliated grain is a sure sign of a poor quality mushroom supplement.
Well, dang. I wanted mushrooms, not brown rice. What should I do?
Well, you should support a small batch producer from right here in the Midwest, Keweenaw Apothecary.
Keweenaw Apothecary? Tell me more.
Keweenaw Apothecary specializes in high-quality mushroom extracts from Michigan, and they always use real mushrooms, never myceliated grain.
That sounds like exactly what I've been looking for. Where can I order?
Well, you can find them at keweenawapothecary.etsy.com. That's KEWEENAW apothecary.etsy.com. Be sure to read their many excellent reviews.
Thanks, buddy. I don't want no low-quality mushroom products from a factory. I want Keweenaw Apothecary.
Wowie wow! Wowie wow! We've got a new hot sauce for you.
It's so delicious.
It's spicy.
It's spicier for sure.
Spicier. It's called Harvest Moon, made with ghost peppers, American persimmons,
and spice bush berry.
It's gonna be great. We also have t-shirts available. Brand new t-shirts.
The best t-shirts, I think.
Baseball tees.
Scrumpers United.
If you've collected apples, if you've collected fruit, you're
Welcome to the club.
You're welcome to a club. You're a scrumper. So check out our merch store, wildedibleworldpod.myshopify.com. Wowie wow!
Long time ago, I can't really remember. I'm kind of on a mission to try to find some, and I would really like to get some in the wild, but there's so many that have been completely destroyed, and because of the disease that you were just describing. But no, it's definitely something on my list I want to do. But the problem is I have so many black walnuts.
Yeah, you have access to so many. Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you've got your black walnuts. You've got your grandpa's goodie getter. You've processed the nuts. What is your favorite thing to do with them?
The favorite thing to do with them, really, and this you're just going to roll your eyes, but I just like to eat them straight up. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I mean, I always have some in the refrigerator, so I'll just or the cabinet. I put them on salads, yogurt parfaits, and stuff like that. On top of pancakes. I mean, I just kind of put them everywhere, or I just eat them straight up with just about a handful.
Sure.
I guess my follow-up question would be, through that, what do you think? What have you found to be the most effective way of preserving the nuts in the fridge?
Yeah. So no, I mean, what I like to do is, well, let me just talk just really briefly about the whole process thing.
Yeah.
So processing, when my mother-in-law said that it was hard and it was messy, I mean, she wasn't lying. It is, because it'll stain your hands. I'm sure you have had your hands stained by black walnuts.
Sure. I think everybody's familiar with Steve, I think you said citronella type smell that they emit, the staining that it happens every year on the pavement and everything. And then I've seen, once you start learning a little bit more about, the byproducts and stuff that you can do with stuff after you've processed, black walnuts is one of the more famous dyes because of how much staining it is.
Yes. So, and I have a chapter on staining and drying. I have a chapter on nutcrackers, and I have a chapter on processing and all that stuff. But the bottom line on processing is you have to go out and get them usually around between September and November, and you can get them when they're green, but you can also harvest them when they're black too. Either way is fine. But the black, when you get later in the season, the blacker they get, and that's the messier they're going to get. I like to get them when they're still green and kind of turning black, so they're a little softer. And so all I do is either stomp on it with my foot, or I take two boards and press the nut in between two boards to basically split the hull open. And so again, you can step on it and split that hull open, or you can press on it and split it open. You could take a baseball bat or whatever and just kind of hit it just hit it like that, and you're basically trying to split the hull open. And so once you have that open, then you can just dig in with your hands, and you just pull that husk right off. Nice. And I have a video on YouTube you can watch too, but I think it has like 500,000 views already on how to do this. But you're basically just trying to rip that hull off of the nut, and then you're going to wash those. When all of them have the hulls off of them, then you wash them. And what you do is you put them in a 5-gallon bucket, and you just stir them really rigorously. I actually use a power drill with like a paint mixer, and I just stir them. And then the nuts will kind of clean themselves. They'll just scrub up against each other, and then they'll just kind of clean themselves. And you just do that. I don't know, like 2 or 3 times. Twice is usually good enough. But you want to try to get all that husk material off of the actual shell. And and then you can also.
Is there any specific purpose to making sure that you want to get it all off? Is there a risk of rotting or anything like that?
Nothing. Well, if you have too much on it, yes, it could rot a little bit and mold. But I mean, the reason why it's so black and why it stains so well is because it, it's basically, um, it's so natural that it has like anti-mold in it already. So it's not really going to mold too much unless you leave them really wet and you have a lot of that stuff on there.
Sure.
But really, the reason why you want to clean them is because you want clean nuts. Basically, you don't want, because if they get all black like that, then they're going to dry, and then all that husk material is basically going to flake off and become dust, and you're going to have all this kind of black dust all over the place. And that black dust, when you're cracking the nuts, that black dust from the husk will get on the kernels, and that's where you're going to get that kind of weird bitter taste.
There we go.
On the kernels.
Awesome.
So a lot
clean
of people,
nuts. Hell yeah, brother.
Yeah, you need to have your nuts clean. But the point is that if you have all that stuff on there and it creates all that dust, it's just a mess to be around when you're cracking them, and
Sure.
also that's gonna get on the nut, on the kernels, and then it's not gonna taste well. Now you can rinse that off, but a lot of people don't. But what I like to do is rinse them as well. But anyway, once you have the nuts clean, then you want to dry them, because you want them to be, you don't want them to be sitting in moisture or water. So you kind of let them sit out. Either you kind of want to put them in a shady area because you don't want direct sunlight, but you just want them to kind of air dry so they're not really wet anymore. And then you have to cure them. So curing them is basically letting them sit and dry, usually in produce bags, like those netting bags you can get at the grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
or potato sacks, or whatever. But you hang them up and you want them to cure, and that's going to take about 4 to 6 weeks. And what curing is basically they're just drying. And what's happening is the kernel inside the shell is drying, and it's shrinking, and it's separating from the shell. So when they're fresh, the kernel is stuck to the sides of the shell. But the curing process dries them, and the kernel is shrinking a little bit, and then the kernel is going to separate from the inside of the shell. And that's how you can crack them, because once they're cured like that and separated from the shell, then you crack it and they're not stuck to the shell anymore.
Sure.
So that's what curing means. That's all it means. I mean, curing can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people.
Oh yeah. No salt involved.
But yes, no salt involved. You're just letting them dry so that the kernels separate from the shell, so that when you crack it, the kernels will fall out of the shell. That's it.
And so another common recommendation I've seen for like, enhancing the efficiency of that nut cracking process is like pairs of snips. Is there like a specific term or style that like to guide people for like getting those nut meats out cleanly?
Yes, but the most important thing, as a tip before we get into the shears, would be soaking the nuts. You want to soak them.
Okay, so wait, that's after you've
Cured nuts.
So
after
you've cured them.
Yes.
And then before you crack them, you soak them again?
Yeah. So you're collecting them around September to November. You're cleaning and washing them. Then you're curing them for 4 to 6 weeks. So now we're talking like January, February.
Perfect.
Is when they're ready to crack, which is basically hockey season and everything else. So you can crack a beer, watch hockey game, and then you can start cracking nuts. That's what I do. But they're cured. They're ready to crack. So when they're ready to crack, again, been drying for 6 weeks, so they're pretty dry. If you're just going to put that in the nutcracker right like that, it's going to shatter a little bit because it's so dry, and it's going to crack almost too easily because it's so dry. And that's when you're going to get little splinters and things like that. And the shells are going to be cracked, smaller chunks, and it might crack too much where you're actually crushing the kernels now, and you don't want that. And the kernels are also pretty dry, so they'll just kind of crumble. So if you want to get those half like the quarters or the half kernels, like you were talking about, the lung-shaped kind of thing. Hello?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay.
Just
Okay,
listening
sorry.
super intently.
These are all incredible
Sorry.
tips. Yeah.
I heard a beeping, so I think it's my phone. I apologize.
All good.
But so yes, so if you really want to get the full, what I call quarters or half of the kernels, like that lung shaped thing that you were talking about, then you're going to want to soak them to add moisture back into the shell and add moisture back into the kernels. And that way, when you crack them, the shell is going to be a lot more forgiving, and the kernel is also going to be a little bit softer, so that it's not subjected to easily being crushed, shattered, and split into small pieces.
Sure.
And then the shells will end up being chunkier and bigger, and then the kernels will also be chunky and big. So, and so soaking is like absolutely the most important, and it's actually in the rules or in the instructions from Grandpa's Goody Getter Nutcracker, but everybody just seems to ignore it. He said, "Oh, you have to soak them for 8 hours or overnight." I've soaked some for like 3 days until I was satisfied with how springy they were.
Really?
Yes. But
so
you soak them.
I was assuming that it wasn't going to be kind of a set and forget it thing, but you can probably let them soak for a week and it wouldn't be an issue.
No. I mean, a week might be a little bit dramatic. I mean, but I would say, anywhere between overnight to 3 to 4 days. But you definitely want to get moisture back in there.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have them soaked, though, you want to air dry them. So I usually just air dry them with a fan for like 15 minutes because I don't want them to be dripping wet or wet to the touch, because then you got water all over the machine and your table, and you don't want that. So
and it could be partial like walnut water too. So it's like staining little droplets and bitter little droplets. Potentially.
That's true. Yep. So you basically just kind of dry them off, and then you can crack. So really you kind of have to plan ahead before you crack. So like in the weekends, I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to crack some this weekend, so I'll soak some on Wednesday or Thursday.
So you soak them, you dry them. Do you soak them again? I'm just kidding.
Wash them. You wash the nut meats, right?
You can.
I'm just joking.
You can, once
wet dry.
I mean, you can soak your nuts as many times as you want.
That's what I'm talking about, buddy.
But once so then you can crack them, and they're going to be a lot easier to crack. They're going to fall apart in your hands. And then you're not going to have all this dust and little little bits and pieces. So you're going to be able to pick the kernels out of the shells a lot easier.
Do you have any like recommendations for tools for like picking out the nut meat, or is that just like a by hand thing usually?
Yeah, so it's usually just by hand. I mean, you can use a nut pick, but the shears that you were alluding to earlier, that is a huge step. Like, so you soak the nuts, and then you want to get shears. And so every Grandpa's Goody Getter does come with a set of shears. Oh. They're actually called mini flush cut pliers, if you want to get technical at the hardware store.
Flush cut?
They're called mini flush cut.
Yeah, okay.
Cutters. And they're very popular for like people who are making jewelry or people who are working on electronics. But they're just this little kind of sharp pliers that work great. And what happens is you take the nut and you crack it on the Grandpa's Goody Getter, but you're really always going to get like one chunk of shell that has a little bit of kernel inside it still. And so what you're doing is you're cutting the shell around the kernel to free the kernel from that chunk of shell. That's it.
Okay.
And you can use any sharp cutting pliers. So there's other pliers, wire cutter pliers and things like that. Like those are easy. But the mini flush cut pliers are the shears. We just call them nut cutting shears. But yeah, those are great. My son he stole a pair of mine to use for model building and that kind of stuff. It's not rocket science. It's easy to find those. But you can also buy them on the website of Grandpa's Goody Getter too.
Very cool.
Excellent.
Those are the 3 tips. Like, get a nutcracker, a really robust nutcracker. Make sure you soak the nuts before you crack them, and then get some good shears to cut the shells around the kernels, and you will definitely have a bigger amount of harvest than just cracking them with a hammer.
Mm-hmm. Going unga bunga, as I like to call it.
Exactly.
Can you imagine? All hammer, no soak, no dry, no
geez.
repeat soak,
no safety glasses.
Oh my gosh, no shears. You're just eating bitter nut dust the whole time.
Yeah.
I would be horrified.
Yeah, well, people will do that, and then foraging does. This is why people think foraging doesn't taste good, because that's probably how the first time they tried black walnuts is like going out there and smashing it to bits, and then tasting this acrid, horrible, likely slightly unripe nut meat or whatever. Speaking of unripe nut meat, that's the one thing I forgot to bring was nocino. Nocino is one of the things made from early unripe walnuts before they've fallen from the tree, and you can cut through them easily with a knife. Surely you've made some of that before, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I've got years of it in my aging. So I have a 4-year-old I think I have a 4-year-old right now. That is absolutely amazing. So the longer you let it sit, the better it gets.
Totally agree. They say you can drink it after I think it's 8 months or 6 months or something like that. It will be hot as hell. It is a very alcoholic hot. I think I also have a 4-year-old one. It's either 3 or 4 years old. I can't remember. I think it might be 4 years now, coming this year. And it is so much better. I do have difficulty kind of figuring out what to do with it. So what are your favorite things to put nocino on?
Ice cream. A big scoop of vanilla ice cream.
Nice.
Just put that in a bowl, and then I like to put black walnuts on it, of course.
Man, you got the whole life cycle right there, the start and the end.
And then put a shot of nocino on vanilla ice cream. It's ridiculous.
Just like microplane some green black walnut husk on. I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
Yeah, but nocino is fantastic.
Okay.
I actually make mine out of whiskey, the cheapest whiskey you can get.
Hey, that's cool.
Instead of vodka or Everclear.
I feel like I was such a clear liquor absolutist about that, and when you say wonderful. Nocino made with whiskey, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it does.
It sounds like it would be way better.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I like it better, but some people like the traditional white liquor way. But I don't really care. I'm just gonna make what I like.
Yeah. Traditions be darned. Hecked. Be hecked. Right. Traditions be hecked, as we say. So you can. Speaking of things that can be made better just because they're black walnut. So some people don't know that you can do black walnut syrup, much like you make maple syrup. So you can tap it, extract the sap in the springtime. That season just passed us, and make a walnut syrup out of that. Have you ever tapped any of your trees on the property?
I do not, just because I'm not there as often as you need to do something like that. But I've definitely purchased it before, and it is pretty awesome. But yeah, I think you really have to be committed to tapping trees. Have you ever tried birch trees too? I heard birch trees are pretty awesome as well.
I've heard that as well, but I have not had the chance to try them. I'm honestly more interested in drinking the sap straight up than I am wanting.
Someone on my Instagram just did that. I forget who it was.
To birch?
Yeah, did birch syrup, and it was a ton of sap. to
Oh,
make
yeah.
like a very little bit of syrup.
I believe it has a worse ratio
Yeah.
than walnut.
Yeah. I would love to try it though.
Yep.
And I believe like maple syrup's 40 to 1 or something, like 30 or 40 to 1, depending on the maple tree. Walnuts like 50. Is that 50? Am I right? 50 to 1?
Yeah. So I've never tried it myself. I've never tapped trees myself, but it's definitely something I would like to do eventually. One of the things about learning about all black walnuts is just how many different topics there are. Like we just touched on just a half a dozen of them. But I'm so glad that you got the Hammond's black walnuts, because there's a chapter in my book about Hammond's. Hammond's is actually the only commercial processor of black walnuts in the country.
Yeah.
And they started in like 1940s.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so they actually they buy all the black walnuts from individual foragers all across the country.
Mm-hmm.
They have this network of 200 hulling stations where they will loan out the hulling machine to like a local farmer. The local farmer will advertise that they buy black walnuts in the area, and then all the foragers around that local farmer will sell the black walnuts to the farmer. He hulls them and then sells the black walnuts to basically Hammond's, and then that's how Hammond's gets all of their inventory. So
That's crazy to know.
There's 200 hulling stations in 12 different states, and it's all done with Hammond's.
Oh, so it's not even. Oh my gosh, yeah, that kind of went over my head that they're not even in the same state, that they're all in separate states, and they process and then send it, like consolidate back at Hammond's.
Yes. So what happens is Hammond's basically finds these local farmers all over the place, but usually there are 12 different states where mostly that they operate, and then they will loan out the machine to the local farmer, so 200 of them, and then all those local farmers are going out and advertising to the foragers in their area, and then all the foragers are going out there collecting the black walnuts, selling them to the hulling stations, and then Hammond's will buy all the nuts from the hulling stations, and that's how they get all their inventory.
That's a lot of nuts.
So amazing.
They harvest between like 18 to 25 million nuts a year.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, sorry, pounds.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. That's like way more nuts. And those are basically going to be the only ones you see on the market too. I mean, you're going to find them at your Walmart, your Trader Joe's, or I don't think they have Hamondo's or Trader Hamondo's black walnuts or anything.
That'd be pretty cool.
When you buy them, you know that they're all hand foraged. So I mean, it's such a cool wild food source that's commercially sold, and really I think that's the only food source that can really say that.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else that is like collected like that on such a large scale. We should.
Maple syrup, I guess. I mean, I'm sure there's some. Maple syrup is probably a pretty good, a good one.
Yeah, that's. I guess that's kind of comparing sap to nuts, though. That's a totally different process.
Like I always say.
As everybody knows how the saying goes.
Yeah. Hey, that's like comparing sap to nuts.
Sap to nuts, my man. But they. I totally. No, there's no other product like that. I can think of several other nuts or products that we should be treating like that, like hickory nuts. That's a huge unused source of nut meat, nut food, oils, bark, all that stuff, and they're an incredibly populous native tree.
Yep. So I mean, that's why there's so many chapters in the book. Is like you can talk about stain, you can talk about processing, you can talk about cracking, you can talk about Hammond's, you can talk about gnomes. I mean, there's so many different aspects of it that I just find so fascinating. And that's why I wrote it all down. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is truly, obviously, a work of passion. 150 pages of a variety of essays, basically anything that you would want to know about black walnuts harvesting, identification, processing, soaking, unsoaking, soaking again, then unsoaking for the final time, tapping.
yeah, you can get,
I love it. It's amazing.
A deep dive.
It is, yeah. It's an amazing little book. You still have plenty of. Do you still have copies to sell?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's all on demand on Amazon. So you just go
awesome.
to Amazon.com and you just type in "nuts about black walnuts," and then if you want a copy, they just print it and send it to you.
Oh, damn! I didn't even know that that's how that worked.
Yeah. Yep. And then I get a royalty on that. So, but yeah, it's. Again, there's a lot more to know. This is kind of just scratching the surface, but it's just, I call it like the hobbyist guide. Like if you're really interested in it and you want to know, then just buy this book and it'll give you a good introduction on a lot of things about it. But there's many other people who've gotten pretty detailed on their processing, methods and stuff like that. They're a little different than mine. But it all kind of has the same result.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely compare your book to even someone like Sam Thayer and just like the depth that he goes ingredient to ingredient in his books. While those
Sap to nuts.
Again, sap to nuts. Yes, that's that's comparing a book that has 30 ingredients to your book that has this one. This is the best deep dive on black walnuts I think anybody is going to find.
Well, thank you. Yeah, there was a couple books out there that I found when I was writing it, but they were basically just all about the lumber industry. There was one guy who wrote a book in the 90s called Black Walnut, and it was about the lumber industry, but he had a couple chapters about the nuts and processing, and that's kind of how I really learned a lot of my techniques. But I really spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the best ways to do it. And I still am. I think my process next year or the year after is going to be different than what I just did in 2024, because I'm always, just learning different ways. So this is a fun hobby.
It is, man. And it's endless. I mean, I think that's probably true to foraging. I mean, we've talked about this countless times, that probably one of the most enrapturing things about foraging in general is that it is another hobby in the sky, that it's like endless. There's always something new to learn. There's always more ethnobotanical history to dive into. Tons of civilizations in the past that are still around today, that are still participating in these ancient techniques. And black walnuts are very much a part of that. So it's been awesome to learn from you about this. And where are you based out of?
I live in St. Paul.
Oh, up in Minnesota. Brilliant.
Yes.
Well, shoot, I'll have to. We'll try to make we
got a lot of pals up there.
We got a lot of friends up there. We'll do a pod trip, and I'll definitely hit you up if we're ever in the area. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Steve, do you have anything to add?
I just want to say thanks, man. I mean, we've been talking for quite a bit now, just in this conversation, and I feel like we've barely scratched the surface. We're not even like through our first soak, like, and there's so many different uses. Like just as a random example from the Great Lakes Foragers Gathering from last year, there were these kids that had taken black walnut shells and sliced them probably about 1/4 of an inch thin and made like pins out of them, and they were like selling them, cute little things.
With like so a bandsaw.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's just like so many cool things that have yet to be discovered.
Sure.
Or, for sure by me.
I mean, I would never have thought of making a nut scratcher.
Exactly.
Or a back scratcher made of nuts, but it's a nut scratcher.
Yeah.
For fun, but yeah. If you ever want to have me on again, I'm more than willing.
Definitely,
to
man.
Chat.
I think we have to.
If you ever want to talk about hunting or turkey calls, I'm your man there.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we'll bring you on for absolutely when black walnuts are starting to come back out again. We'll bring you back on, talk about how to select them, the whole other side of it that we barely didn't even got into. Because I think we talked mostly about processing, extraction, and that today. But we'll definitely hit the other end. There, like you said, there's an endless amount of topics to scratch the surface on. So it's been lovely having you, bro.
Yeah. So if you ever come up to Minnesota, just definitely give me a call.
Dude, you can count on it. We're planning on taking the show on the road at some point. We got to get out there and meet more people. So we'll be reaching out for sure.
Awesome. Cool.
You have a great rest of your week, JJ. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye.
JJ.
Ta-da!
That was JJ Reich, Nuts About Black Walnuts. Buy his book on Amazon. Get his nut scratchers. I believe you can DM him for those. I think he's still got some. Let's get to the fun part.
The funsies?
Yeah, let's eat some black walnuts and talk about like what they taste like fresh, and then we'll try the we got some black walnut syrup from Funk's Grove that we'll do like a little shot of.
Right.
So, black walnuts. This is the wild black walnuts from Hammond's, like we were just talking about, one of the oldest and only black walnut producer in the United States. These are 3 years old. They have been sitting on a shelf in a vacuum container, or not a vacuum container, but like, a sealed container. They smell woody.
They taste 3 years young to me. These are
they're still absolutely tender. They were perfectly cured. I think anybody that has eaten nuts before, that it's like when they're cured perfectly, they can last for a really long time. And so, black walnuts to me, I've always had this kind of like floral, bitter flavor. There's definitely like that soft, buttery, sweet undertone. They definitely, in my opinion, they're not one of my favorite nuts.
I wonder how much the flavor varies from like tree to tree or, area to area, just because there are a few different colors and maybe it's just like different curing, different whatever the heck Hammond did to these things. But there's definitely a little bit of color variance and even a little flavor variance in between them.
Absolutely. Yeah, flavor variance for sure.
You know what I mean? Like the ones that are like a little bit darker, like a little bit totally different flavor. Yeah. Not totally, but you know what I mean? Like
yeah, absolutely.
Little nuance to that flavor.
Absolutely worth the nuts aren't cheap, but these are absolutely worth the cost, especially because knowing now that they're hand foraged, that every single black walnut has been hand foraged, that money has gone down the pipeline to the people doing the work. It's a product of North America. It's delicious, keeps well for over 3 years. I still
safely
use this in baking and granola and everything like that. It's a really awesome little product. Let's try this black walnut syrup. So this is by our friends over at Funk's Grove.
The coolest
folks ever. We really love them. They usually, obviously they specialize in maple syrup. They have had a Maple Grove there. You can go back to year 2 of our podcast and check out the episodes we did with them, learning all about their process and everything.
Dude, it just smells like...
like spiced walnut, maple syrup. Anyway, cheers.
Cheers.
Tink.
Oh,
yeah, that's like
that's so good.
Like campfire marshmallows.
Holy heck.
Wow.
That's really good, dude.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And it's a very difficult product to acquire. I had to call, and I forgot. I called like a day late, and I was only able to get these little bottles.
Yeah, we have like like 50 milliliter.
Yeah, 50 milliliter. This is like just a couple ounces.
But it's so good.
It's amazing. It's one of the best syrups you're gonna taste, and it's novel. It's interesting. It's different. It's not the same walnut or I keep doing that. It's not the same maple syrup that we've all had before, and it's not that processed corn syrup that's attempting to be maple syrup that they'll sell you for cheap at the regular store. So, specialty products, specialty books. All worth well worth investing in, especially when we're talking about walnut products. It's a really cool native tree to North America. There's a lot of equipment that go along with the hobby that really pushes the process along. It's not just like doesn't just look neat.
And plus, they really are everywhere. You know,
Totally. Yeah, everywhere. I bet everybody knows that they have a black walnut in their neighborhood. When you just look up their regionality, like their.
and even if you don't like get into harvesting, you know, if you don't have access to 1,000 trees, you know, through your wife or whomever, you can find a couple nuts. You can do this process on a small scale. It speeds it up a little bit. You might have to go a little bit of hammer goofy with them, but at least you can try this and know what we're talking about.
Yeah, so it's like natural range is almost the entirety of eastern North America, which is the majority, I believe, of our listening population. But it looks like they have a different kind of walnut out west. That's not going to be the black walnut. The Juglans nigra is the binomial for all you nerds. Well, anyway, I think that'll wrap it up for our first episode back. Got a lot of really cool interviews headed your way, a lot of really cool authors. Well, like I said, big things coming for 25. Wish us luck. Check out the merch store. We'll have some new notebooks and some stickers.
For your bumpers.
For your bumpers. Your booties. The booty of the car. Anyway, love you guys.
Miss you so much.
It's good to be back, Steve.
Good to be back, Michael.
Love you guys. Talk soon.
Bye.
Wowie wow.
Wowie wow.